Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Sheila.
Hi,
We are really looking forward to this evening.
me too.
How is the weather there? It is so warm here. Honestly, it's like
Oh,
being abroad. It's fabulous.
yeah, we've cooled down a little bit, but the rain hasn't reached us yet, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I think the flowers need it all right. A little bit of rain, don't they? Welcome, everybody. Keep coming on in. We've got a lovely evening for you this evening, and I'm just going to explain a little bit about housekeeping when everybody comes through. We're very excited to have Sheila here this evening. We nabbed her before retirement, before you went back into retirement, Sheila.
Hmm.
So, welcome everybody to the Ikigai webinar series. You've probably seen us on social media. We've been putting little reels out there that we're actually celebrating 5 years on social media. And we were running live courses. And then during COVID, we started the webinars and it continued. And we're nearly hitting 80 webinars over the last 5 years. So, quite a lot. And this evening, we are delighted to have Sheila Scott. She has produced this lovely book, Putting Health at the Heart of Your Practice. It's actually edition 2. And I can remember reading the first edition and taking away so many things about it, about health and the way we speak to our patients. So I'm really looking forward for Sheila to share all her knowledge with you this evening. Um, Sheila is in retirement at the moment. She came out to do some workshops. She has qualification in psychology, in marketing. And Sheila, you'll explain a little bit more perhaps about your coaching and going into practice and so on.
Yes, yeah, I started working with practices in 1989 to help them become more successful and more profitable, and carried on until 2017 when I retired the first time. So I worked with hundreds of practices in my career, and worked with hundreds of hygienists and a few therapists, who were just beginning to make their mark by the time I retired. So it's been lovely to see the progression in the last 7 years when
Yes.
I came back.
Yeah,
I
it's
think the
amazing.
world is the hygienist and the therapist's oyster right now. I think there's
Of
so many
course.
opportunities.
Absolutely. So if you wouldn't mind just moving the slide on for me then, Sheila, I'm just going to explain. So just on the left-hand side, there's a QR code there. And for anybody that attends the webinars, we have this 40% discount on the NSK shop. That's the code there that you can write down, or the QR code will take you through to the web shop. Remember, you'll just need to use that code and it expires on the 29th. On the right-hand side, the evaluation, as people, the regular attenders will know, we're trialing something different. We're doing the evaluations at the end of the presentation today, and it's through a QR code or a link that I will put in the chat at the end. Now, please don't all rush at once, because what's happening is everybody is just slowing it down. We'll be doing questions and answers at the end, so just take your time. Please don't all rush in and answer the questions. And you must tick the commission box and then the certificate. And if everything's answered correctly, your certificate will be sent to you. Any questions, you can email me, nskikigai@gmail. Again, I'll put that in the chat in a moment. So we can move on to the aims and objectives, Sheila.
And I'm sure everybody has had a quick scan of the aims and the objectives for this evening. So I'm not going to labour what we're going to be doing. You can have a quick read there if necessary. But this is, of course, what you're going to be judged on when it comes to the evaluation. So, are you okay if I make a start and explain a little bit more about what we're doing tonight? Point number one on those objectives there is what patients want from their dental practice and their perceived need for hygiene advice and care. When I started working with dental practices in 1989, I was very keen to make sure that the first thing I did with any practice I worked with was find out exactly what the patients wanted and what the patients thought of their practice, because the only thing a business has is its relationship with its customers. And if it's going to be successful, it has to understand its customers very well. That means patients in dentistry. And there's no point in trying to sell patients what you think is right for them. You have to start with what they want, and um, you've got to dress your service in terms that they are going to appreciate from you. So I started finding out what patients wanted. And what that meant was I put patient questionnaires into every dental practice I worked with almost every dental practice I worked with until 2017. So I've got this bank of knowledge about what patients want from dental practices. So do you think you know what that is? You're working with them every day, you're talking to patients every day. I quite often ask dental teams what it is they think patients want from dentistry. So let's look at the big things. And I think there are three things that general dental practices do for their patients. So I'm going to ask you to think for a minute about which one is the most important to the patients. Is it treatment to repair problems? Is it treatment to keep patients healthy? Or is it treatments to help patients look better? Which one do you think is the most important to your patients? Go on, put it in the chat. Let's find out what you think. Cosmetic, restorative, or preventive? Which one do you think is right? Which one do you think the patients want most?
We've got health. Anybody else? Repair or cosmetic, health, look better. I think that comfort, function, prevention, cosmetic.
Clever. Function. I didn't put that one in there. Clever.
Restore.
Well, that's interesting. That's quite a range. Okay.
Yeah. So
Now,
health, repair, cosmetic. Yeah.
your patients might be different from the vast majority. You might have a niche of patients, but on the whole, patients in Europe, in fact, patients in America as well, are very clear about what it is that's most important to them. And I'll tell you what I found. Now, this list I'm going to show you here comes from my original research that appeared in the first edition of Putting Health at the Heart of Your Practice. So this was published in 2014. So this is based on about 7,000 patients in 50 practices. 50, does that make sense? Doesn't seem right somehow, but it was definitely 7,000 patients data, which I published in 2014. And what we found on average, overall, 92% of the patients that I'd questionnaire in all these practices rated trusting the dentist as the most important thing to them. So more than anything else, your patients want a relationship, and they want a relationship with somebody who's going to care for them. I think nowadays we can read that dentist word as the main caregiver. So if you are working to the full scope of practice, I would say trusting the therapist will come into the same level of need from the patient for that trust, that personal thing is what they want. Number 2 on the list was healthy teeth and gums. Health is the number one clinical thing that your patients are looking for from you. So that's 4 out of 5 patients, 8 out of 10 patients, 16 out of 20 patients will tell us that healthy teeth and gums is more important to them than anything else except trust in a dental practice. So we have to focus on delivering health and proving that we're delivering health to the patients. Hey, funny, isn't it? Isn't health the biggest thing that you all give to your patients? I certainly thought so. Even in orthodontic practices, health was the biggest clinical thing that patients were looking for. So very, very important. Next on the list, cleanliness, treatments to solve dental problems and being seen in quickly in an emergency. I'm not going to spend too long talking about these. You can look up what the implications are of those, or you can think about the implications later. But I just want to say that Numbers 4 and 5, treatments to solve problems and being seen quickly in an emergency tend to go together, and they tend to move up and down the list depending on differences in the political landscape and the economical landscape of the countries at each time. If we're in a recession, these two aspects will be very important to patients. And in time, when times are better, they will drop further down the list. So they move quite a lot over the years, over time. Just mentioning that. Sterilisation, very important to patients. They're watching you, they're watching what you're touching. They're thinking about what they're going to catch from the last patient, and they're trying to catch you out. They're looking to catch you out when they're watching how you're moving together. So that's an interesting one to think about. I would say that in the days when, way back when dinosaurs ruled the earth, sterilisation was done by autoclaves and surgeries that were hissing and noisy and wet and steamy, and everybody apologised for them. Patients were more confident about patient protection and sterilisation than they can be in some practices now where the sterilisation is well hidden. So do talk about sterile pointy things and watch what you're touching with your gloved hands. Make sure patients know that you're putting measures into practice to keep them nice and safe. Special skills of the dentist, 71% importance rating. 71% of patients felt that this was very important to them. My dentist used to worry about this one because they thought, well, I don't have a degree, an MSc, I don't have a faculty membership. But actually what the patients mean by special skills is their dentist good enough to put a filling in their mouths? So therapists, special skills are how good you are at everything you're doing. And we have to give patients that confidence. Screening for oral cancer is quite interesting. We first put this on the list and asked patients how important it was to them in the late 1990s and the early noughties. When I had a dentist who bought a veloscope in the City of London and wondered how important it was to her patients and whether she should do some promotion for it. We put it into the list, found out that about 55% of patients felt it was very important to them. And she felt that her £3,000 that she spent on her veloscope was money well spent, and she spent a lot of time promoting her oral cancer screening service. Now, I know every dentist and every hygienist and every therapist in the land does this every time, but you don't all tell the patients that you're doing it, and it is very important, and the importance is increasing year on year. So it's something to bear in mind. It's something I'd like to hear everybody talking about more brutally, I think. And by that I mean I want you to use the C word. Please say that was your oral cancer check. Your mouth's healthy. That was your oral cancer check. And the patients relax. They like to know that it's been done. They feel safe. They feel looked after because their oral cancer screen's been done. I find too many patients who still don't know that their oral cancer screen has been done. Now, all of these aspects are really important to patients. These are the 8 top really important aspects to patients in a dental practice. Think about for a moment what it means if all of these aspects are really important to patients and costs are less important. What do you think that means? I think that means that if we can deliver all these really important aspects to patients so that they believe absolutely they're getting the best of all of these, costs don't matter so much. It's a very interesting thought to have when you are developing the practice and thinking about putting fees up. If the patients value the care that you give them, then fees will not be a problem, or not be so much of a problem, let's be honest. Here's another one. If all of these aspects are really important, and ensuring healthy teeth and gums is important to 82% of patients, and the skills and advice of a hygienist is only important to 46% of patients as it was by 2014. What does that mean? What's the implication of that? How can that be so? Don't you spend your lives ensuring healthy teeth and gums? Somebody somewhere hasn't got through to the patient to tell them what it is that hygienists do. Okay, so we have to work on capturing the patient's heart and mind, helping the patient understand what it is that you do, because you can give them what they want in a dental practice. The world's your lobster. There we go. Okay, so that was research that I published in 2014. In early or late 2023, Chris Barrow asked me to deliver some workshops to his clients January, February this year on the topic of health, on most of these topics, how to deliver all of these aspects to patients beautifully. And I admit, having been retired for 7 years and spent my time cycling and going out for coffee with friends, I had a little bit of what do you call that syndrome, where you don't believe you're good enough anymore, imposter syndrome. So I thought, well, before I do this, before I put a workshop together, I'm going to have to repeat this research and find out if it's still relevant, see if anything's changed. So I recruited 12 practices and we asked the views of over 1,000 patients. It was about 1,100 patients, just to see if anything had changed in the intervening 7 years. We've got updated a little sample research. We had some problems with methodology, so I haven't published the results. But if anyone wants a project, I have one just sitting waiting for you. Let me know and I can send you my questionnaires to find out what your patients want, and maybe you can collate information from lots more. So most important in 2024, we took dentist skills and dental trust and we asked it slightly different ways. And we found that dentist level of care and attention, trust of the dentist and the technical skills of the dentist came out the top three aspects that patients wanted from their practice. That was what patients were now looking for. Very clear about it, and very, almost every patient, I think it was something like 98.7% of patients would tell us that these three aspects, which were always at the top of the list, were what they wanted from their practice. So we've got to work really hard on providing these aspects. Treatments to solve dental problems became the second, or became the number one clinical thing that patients wanted. But I think, remember I said that when the going gets tough, that was an aspect that was more important for a while, and then it would drop again. And I think that's a leftover from COVID times and lockdown. After all, some patients have only seen a practice 3 times since COVID. So I think that is important, but we have to put it into context of what's happening. Cleanliness, again, I can understand that through COVID times, and sterilisation also. But number 5 is healthy teeth and gums. This is what patients want. And there wasn't paper width between these 5. Or actually, it's 8 really, because we had 3 in the first one. And I think the healthy teeth and gums was something like 95.6% of patients told me that that was what was really important to them. So it's still up there, and it's still an essential part of practice, and we still have to be seen to be delivering healthy teeth and gums to our patients. Healthiness of the team made an appearance for the first time, and I think the practices I've seen since I've been working back again, certainly teamwork has become much more important over the last 5 years in particular, and the team is much more involved with patients, and I can see why patients are now looking for more help from the team. But number 7, screening for oral cancer is also significantly more important to patients than it was 7 years ago. We're now looking at nearer 80% of patients saying this is really important for them. Vital that we show patients, we explain to patients, we give patients reassurance that we're checking for oral cancer or mouth cancer every single time they're seen by a hygienist, a therapist, or a dentist. So that's something, please, 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 can you all use the C word? Every single patient, every single exam, every single hygiene visit. If you're checking for oral cancer, please tell them that you've just done it. I've just checked you for a screen for mouth cancer, that your tongue, your lips, your cheeks, your skin are healthy. That was your oral cancer screen. And the shoulders drop, the patient relaxes, they're much happier. They believe that you've done a better job. If you tell them you're looking for lumps and bumps, you tell them for looking that you're checking the mouth. They don't really understand that's what you're doing. I think it's quite difficult for them to get get the message. You've got to be blunt with them. You've got to use that C word. We're getting used to it now. Don't worry about frightening your patients. They would rather you frighten them and check them. And if you do frighten them, then hopefully you've caught it nice and early and made a difference to them. Number 8, this is what I'm here for, advice and care from a hygienist. It's still number 8 on the importance list. It's still behind that healthy teeth and gums. There's still a gap. The gap has narrowed, but there were 5 practices in my sample who were clients of mine, and I'm afraid I'm a bit of a bully when it comes to improving patients' perceptions of the importance of the hygiene department. So they were delivering very meaningful explanations of what was going on in the hygiene department. And I still think that there's room to improve how patients perceive what it is that you're offering for them. Again, all of these aspects much more important than any of these. Interesting, high-tech equipment was at the bottom of everybody's list. Patients didn't really care. So no matter how excited you are about your scanners and your airflow thingies, guided thingies, don't forget to explain to them what it is that your kit is doing for them. It's not the equipment per se that's important, it's what the equipment does. Now, having ascertained what patients want, hope you're making notes there. We know that patients want help, so let's give it to them. Are we giving it to them? How are we doing? What I'm searching for is, not only did I check with my clients what the patients wanted, but I checked what the patients told me they thought of what they were getting. So if 80% of patients want health, are 80% of patients appreciative of the health service it's delivered, or do 50% of the patients think it's right, in which case we have 30% of patients who are not sure? That's a satisfaction gap. And I'm searching for satisfaction gaps because I want to fill them. I want to repair that gap. I want to make sure that patients are absolutely left in no doubt that you are giving them quality care. So here are the most common satisfaction gaps I was finding by 2014. Efforts to ensure dental health. We had that gap that 82% of patients might tell us that they wanted health and 50% thinks the practice is good at delivering health. What? That has to be a communications problem because that's what practices do. This importance of hygiene. Why do patients want health but not appreciate what hygienists are doing? What are we not telling patients? Why aren't we showing patients what we're doing? Why are we not proving the value of the service that's being delivered? Sterilisation was a gap, explanation of costs was a gap. Sometimes we had to deal with communication skills of the dentist. I know that's a shock to everybody, but if any of these aspects were low, missing, gaps, showing gaps, then trust was affected. And that was the number one thing, and the practice wasn't working as well as it might do. 2024, what had happened? Now, this is really interesting because there are changes. Very small sample, only 1,200 patients or 1,100 patients. The biggest satisfaction gap we had in 2024 was provision of cosmetic treatment. Isn't that interesting? Not that important, but the biggest gap that we found. So typically, 50–60% of patients might tell us that they might be interested in, or they might think cosmetic treatment is important to them. That's up from about 43–45% by 2014. Big increase in interest in cosmetic treatment over the last 5 years. Now, whether that's promotion, younger patients, the telly, I think it's Instagram myself, and more practices promoting it, but huge percentage of patients feeling that their practice wasn't delivering cosmetic treatment. But remember, it's not the most important thing. This is the most important thing. Oral cancer screening, much more important. It's essential that we show patients that we're delivering oral cancer. Gaps in terms of emergencies and appointments, I think that again is COVID. Everything's more expensive. Nobody's going to admit to it right now. And there's a gap in terms of the skills and advice of the hygienist. It might be bigger than it appears in this research as well, because so many of my practices took part in that research. I had to get the practices where I found them to get this research done quickly to find out what the difference was there. So there's still a need to fill gaps here: sterilisation, sorting dental problems, dentists, communications skills, efforts to ensure dental health. So it's similar to what it was in 2014, with a couple of notable exceptions: provision of cosmetic treatment, oral cancer screening bigger than they were before. It's a bit of an opportunity for practices in terms of that cosmetic treatment, though. And before I move on to what to do about this, I'm just going to show you how big those satisfaction gaps, because I think this is quite interesting. I'm going to show you the range of responses I got in this research. For example, the provision of cosmetic treatment, we went from a 23% satisfaction gap to, oh, I can't see, I've got a box in the corner there. I think it was 2% satisfaction excess. The column on the right-hand side, which was originally green, I think it might have come out dark grey currently, but that column is mainly down to the efforts of one practice in the borders, right on the border of Scotland and England, which was superb. A beautiful, beautiful practice, beautiful service, fantastic team, very careful about how they communicated with their patients and explained to patients and gave patients confidence that they were looking after them. Most practices were showing satisfaction gaps. Oral cancer, 23% to, again, I can't see what that figure is under there, and I can't remember what it was exactly.
2.
Again, it's a 2. That was down to Berwick Smiles, who were my superb practice, delivering this care and getting such superb results. This practice, on the back of this questionnaire, put their fees up with huge confidence. It was beautiful to see that practice benefiting from the work it had put in. So there's some more ranges. Cost went from an 8% satisfaction excess to a 7.7% satisfaction gap. Skills and advice in hygienist wasn't the difference between what patients wanted from their hygienist and what they felt they got wasn't that different, but it's still not enough compared to the need for health itself. So that looks okay-ish, but it's not really, because we still need to improve how patients perceive the value of the hygiene service. And still a small gap there in terms of efforts to ensure dental health. And even in this brilliant practice, it was communicated beautifully. They only had a 2% satisfaction excess, and the practice with the biggest gap was -6, so that's 6% satisfaction gap. So quite a range of responses there, and it would be interesting to find out what your practice is showing. And I'm quite happy to let everybody have a copy of my questionnaire results. So what do we do about this? Oh, I'm getting a cup of tea. Thank you. First thing, what I want to do is to watch your language. And I think a lot of the opportunities that we have can be sorted by paying attention to how we describe and talk about what it is we're doing with our patients. I'm a great believer in swear jars in the practice. It'll come as no surprise to you to hear that I absolutely hate the word scale and polish, scaling, cleaning. They are such wasteful words to describe what you're doing, and I want them banned. If anybody uses any of these words in any of my practices, it's a £1 fine straight away. So find a way to stop your team using those words. They are undermining everything you're doing. But there's other words that undermine what you're doing, and they include toothbrushing. It's a horrible word. And the reason I don't like it is because I don't think it means the same to patients as it means to you. It's fairly obvious. Cleaning to you might mean removing the plaque from every surface of every tooth every day, but to a patient it means cleaning the floors with bleach. It's nothing to do with their mouths. In the same way, toothbrushing might mean removing the plaque from every surface of every tooth every day to you, but to a patient it might mean using my husband's toothbrush to wipe round my mouth once a day to remove the spinach. Or maybe using my toothbrush to wipe round my mouth a few times during the day to remove some of the visible stuff on my teeth. So that's what they think. So every time you say the word toothbrushing, they think about what they know of the word toothbrush. They think about what they do with their toothbrush. So I'm going to ban that word as well because I think it allows you to let the patients believe that what they're doing is okay. Does that make sense? So what do we use instead? Okay, come to that in a second. There's a few more words I want to talk about. Just means nothing. Regular doesn't mean much. Routine is not essential. So let's stop using it and use the word essential instead. Can you see where I'm coming from? I'm thinking about what my language means to the patient and I'm adopting new words. Lots of bad words that we need to get out of our vocabulary. Just making a note here, see if there's another one I meant to use. No. So what do we use instead? I like the words, if you're going to talk about removing plaque from the teeth, please use the words removing plaque. I know that by the time I retired, a lot of hygienists were using the word biofilm, but to me that meant re-educating the patients. And there's another word, Siobhan were talking to me about guided biofilm therapy. If you've already started using it, you might have to continue your education process. But I think a lot of patients understand the word plaque because the toothpaste companies have been using it for about a decade now, decades, to educate patients about what toothpaste does and what toothbrushes do to patients. And I think they understand that plaque is something that sticks to the teeth. It sometimes gets hard, and it certainly contains all the bugs that do all the damage. So let's use the words that remind them of that process. And I think, again, to be brutal and blunt, I would rather use words like hard plaque and soft plaque. Soft plaque you can control, hard plaque I have to get off because it stops you being able to control the soft plaque that does all the damage. So let's explain it in that sort of terms. So when it comes to what do you call what do you call what you're doing with the patients, why don't we call it plaque control? That makes you a plaque controller. I have got one hygienist who has the words plaque controller on her door, which I think is quite nice. But plaque control, soft plaque control is up to the patient, hard plaque control is up to the hygienist. But plaque control is really essential because it's what's in plaque that does the damage. Use the word biofilm if you must, but don't talk about scale. Don't talk about cleaning. Talk about what it is that you're doing for the patient. Toothbrushing is about plaque control. So we use a brush to control the soft plaque, to remove the soft plaque. You use your floss or your tools to remove the soft plaque or disturb the soft plaque or however you want to explain it. I'm not a hygienist, hey. I'm just trying to help you guys make the most of what you have. So I might not be medically correct every time, but psychologically, linguistically, please use the language to appeal to the patients. I said no routine, it's essential plaque control appointments, essential prevention appointments. 30 years ago, I met a dentist in Aberdeenshire, in the rural Aberdeenshire. He used to send his patients through to Helen for their prevention. And all the patients knew how essential prevention was because they knew they wanted to keep their mouths as healthy as possible. And just that one word made such a difference to how that hygienist was viewed by her patients in those days. And I have to admit, I'm still building on that. So please try to have conversations with your team, have a team meeting to talk about how you're going to talk about hygiene. And I've got lots of advice for hygienists on how to be more impressive with your patients. But my biggest bit of advice is a little story which we developed over the years to use to explain to patients what hygienists do. It explains the why, the what, how I know it's working, what happens at the end of hygiene to the patients. I had a dentist in Edinburgh crown this little explanation, Plaque Story 3, because it came in a rhythm of three items to talk about every time. And a lot of my clients to this day still use Plaque Story 3 when they are talking to the patients and sending them through to see their hygienist. Gosh, I've hardly mentioned therapists. I'm sorry. I'm come from the old ages when dinosaurs ruled the earth. You're all therapists now, A lot of therapists are practicing to the full scope of practice and taking over beautifully from their dentists in terms of exams and hygiene visits, and I think it's fantastic. So when I do say dentist, please can you hear therapist too? I'm going to have to work on my language as well. So Black Story 3. This is the story. This is the story that makes the difference. This is the gem in the whole hour. So I hope it makes sense to you. So why are you seeing me? Why are you sending me for further hygiene visits? Why are you sending me for my first hygiene visit? There's no such thing as a hygiene visit, by the way. It's a program of hygiene visits, a lifetime of hygiene visits. Hygienist is for life, not just for Christmas. I digress. Sheila, you've got plaque, you've got inflamed gums, you've got you're at risk of diabetes, you've got heart disease in the family, all these reasons why. Probably pick one with the patient. We really need special care of you to help keep your mouth nice and healthy. Find a reason, find whatever a number one reason is why I need regular, essential hygiene visits. Plaque is the enemy of general health, and you need to explain that. Plaque is the enemy because it works like this, because the bacteria eat away at, because the bacteria then get into the bloodstream, and there's lots of research now to show that it has links with, what are the essential ones? There's definitely a bidirectional causative link with diabetes and with kidney disease now. I think you guys will know more than I do, but explain that, talk about the research that is coming through. For a long time before I retired, Tim Donnelly, periodontist from the States, was talking about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the enemies of good dental, of good health, Alzheimer's, heart disease, arthritis, and diabetes, all being linked with issues. So talk to patients about that. Plaque is the enemy. We can control plaque. It will be better for you. So because you've got plaque and because you've got all these risk factors, it's really important that you see your hygienist therapist regularly. And what our hygienist therapist will do there is 3, assess your home care every time they see you, and just see how effectively you're controlling this plaque every day at home. They'll remove any hard plaque you have because you can't do that. And that will enable you to work, or they will work with you, enabling you to work on the skills, the tools, and on the techniques to remove or control plaque from every surface of every tooth every day. What that means, of course, is you'll have a healthier mouth, you should have fewer fillings, or this dental work will last longer. It's really important now that you've had these implants in or you've got this crown work done. You don't want to have this done again. We want to keep this as healthy and as strong as possible, and it's going to be better for your body health. So hopefully that makes sense. Sheila, you've got plaque. Because of your heart disease in your family, it's really important that we keep you really healthy. Pay a lot of attention to how healthy your mouth is. And your mouth isn't as healthy as it could be because of the plaque that you've got collecting here and here. And plaque is what does all the damage. So we've got to get this under control. You need to see our hygienist every 3 months so that the hygienist can assess how you're doing at home every day, controlling. You have to control this every day at home, assess how you do this every day, remove the hard plaque that's stopping you, keep your mouth absolutely healthy. But more importantly, she's going to work with you on the skills, the tools, and the techniques to remove or control plaque from every surface, every tooth, every day. And my idea is that your patient goes home thinking every surface, every tooth, every day, every surface, every tooth, every day. And that means I'll have a healthier mouth. My dental work should last longer. It'll be better for my whole body health. Hopefully that makes sense. But I want your dentist using that when they refer patients through. I want you explaining this to patients when you see them every time. I want your receptionists explaining this to patients when they phone up and ask what happens in the practice and how you look after patients. I certainly want your treatment coordinator talking to patients in detail about how this takes place. And it's easy to remember. because it's a story of threes, 3 reasons, 3 things, 3 aims, 3 details, 3 effects. So if you take a photo of anything, take a quick photo of that and I'll move on. I presume, Siobhan, that the slides will be available to everyone, or they can listen to the
Well, they can
again.
watch back on demand. It'll be uploaded in about 10 days.
On
That's
demand.
okay.
I love it.
Yes.
Fantastic. Hello, Kat. I've just seen that you're on there. Hello. Now, one of the things that I promised to do was to help you ask your dentists for help. Those of you who are still working as a hygiene department in a dental practice and you're dependent on dentists for sending patients through to you. This is what I would suggest you do Monday morning. What is it? Tomorrow's Friday. Friday morning. Summarize these findings, or better still, tell your dentist to buy the book. It's all explained. It's a quick little read. It was written for team members, so everyone in the practice should find it easy enough to understand, and it's got little action points at the end of every chapter. So summarize the findings, tell your dentist how important health is, tell your dentists that hygienists quite often lag behind in the importance stakes, and that's stupid because what you do is exactly what patients are looking for. Do some sums, find out what the size of the opportunity is for seeing patients. Now, I look at practices sometimes and I think, how many patients in this practice would benefit from a hygiene visit? And my hygienists will argue with me. They'll say 100% every time. Even my dentists will say 80, 90%. Surely 95% of patients would benefit from at least an annual hygiene visit to help keep them on track looking after their mouths. So why don't you look at yesterday's book and say, John, the dentist, 90% of today's patients were great, but that's the wrong number to pick. But let's say 20% of your patients today are not being seen by the hygiene department. They're not booked in for a hygiene appointment. I've never seen them. I've only seen them once. Or just look at the statistics. Or it's almost certain that you're missing opportunities to see patients. Even if it's only 2 patients that you saw today have never been in for a hygiene visit, we need to do something about that because surely their mouths would be healthier if we could get them into the hygiene appointment. I can help those patients. Let's talk about money. And these are just, I don't know who's being paid what and who's charging out what now, but just as an example, supposing you're charged out £100 an hour and you're being paid £40 an hour. Well, that's £800 income for the day. Great. But if you take your pay away from your total income, you get a potential contribution to costs and profits in the practice, which is easier for dentists to see, to compare you with an associate, for example. So don't worry about what the money is being spent on and what the profit is. You make a contribution. Your surgery is being used. Net of your pay, there's a contribution to costs and profits in the practice. Let the principal worry about what that means and how much they need. If you have an hour unbooked because patients aren't certain enough that you're important or they haven't been referred in, that is going to be a loss of £60 every hour. If there's an extra day in, that's an extra £480 coming into the practice. So just point out to the principal that you're aware of the finances, you're aware of the cost, you're aware of the potential for profit and loss, and let them make the decision about how much hygiene time they would really like in the practice. The thing about hygiene time is that you cost less than an associate because there's much fewer materials and much fewer equipment costs, and also no lab costs. So you're an easier source of profit when we're doing a comparison there, and you're usually in competition for surgery space with an associate. However, you're associated with far more effective if you're seeing all the patients for hygiene. Anyway, so sums, how many patients, money, what it's worth, how much hygiene would you like me to be delivering, how fully booked would you like me to be? Okay, in order to do that, I need some help. And the help I need is how you explain to the patients how they're coming to see me, what happens when you come to see me, and what they're going to get as a result of that. Can we have a discussion about basically about Black Story 3 in whatever version, whatever way you wish to do it? And I find that when we have these discussions, when I've had these discussions, when my hygienists have had these discussions, we find that practices organise to help build the hygiene department much more effectively. So much so that in a number of my practices, I know we're struggling to find hygiene time. Do you know, even in the 90s, I don't know if any of you are old enough, as old as me, to remember there was an American guy called Ken somebody who was a basketball player. He was very tall. He was on the lecture circuit, and he had a 1.5 dentist practice in Seattle and 7 hygienists who were all booked out full time and seeing patients regularly every 3 months. And his practice worked beautifully. And a number of practices in the UK set up to emulate that model. I don't know any that managed it as beautifully, but it's certainly possible to set up a practice in that way. It's equally possible to, if you get the message right, the practices that set up as dental health centres could do really, really well now. And those of you who are looking to offer full scope of practice, if you get your dental health checks as effective and as meaningful to the patients as Black Story 3, you will never lose a patient again. And I wish you luck. And I hope that helped. Which leaves me, oh yes, I forgot about get your referrals and promotions in place too, which leaves me with the sales pitch, which is the book of the talk, which is Putting Health at the Heart of Practice, second edition, which is available from either of these sources. Siobhan very kindly offered to help make sales of Putting Health at the Heart of Your Practice easier in Ireland. We found out how much it costs to post and to send money between our countries, and hopefully we'll make it a little bit easier for you. Thank you.
Thank you,
You want,
Sheila. So just
you
to
want me to move
explain
on
that,
to?
yeah, just 1 sec, we'll stay on there for a minute, because
Okay.
on the left-hand side is for in the UK, and the right-hand side, as you can see, is in Ireland. And that was just to keep the costs down. So Sheila sent me a batch to Ireland so that we could send them directly from here. Now, I've just put the Irish link into the chat, if you can see that there. So if you're interested, this little book is great. It's great for giving the dentist. So it's, even get it for yourself, make pointers. And I just think there's lots of little tips and tricks in here where you can do some practice training, get everybody together, maybe let everybody read the book and come together and like do a book review, what you could maybe implement into the practice.
The book costs £20 in the UK. What are you charging for it in Ireland, Siobhan? €60, €70?
26 with the postage.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
It's okay. So, and then if we go on to the next slide, just now, please don't all rush at once. Take your time, because we're going to be chatting here and doing a little discussion. So please don't all rush in. And I'm going to put a link into the chat as well, because remember I said at the beginning, we are just trialing this way of doing the evaluations, and we haven't quite decided if we're going to continue. So please give us feedback on it as well. I'm just putting the link in there for the evaluation. And also, if you need to get in contact, NSK Ikigai gmail, just with any feedback or any issues. So as I say, please don't all rush at once and crash the system. Thank you very much, Sheila.
Does anyone have any questions?
We probably need the audience of the dentists on here, you see. So it's how do we bring this back to practice? As you know, if we go back in tomorrow and our dentist, we want to implement this, how do you suggest we go about that?
I think we start off with a discussion with the dentists and have the conversation around the findings of the research and the potential for profitability. I think let's hit them where it matters to them normally. So we all know that regular hygiene visits will benefit patients, but it can also benefit the practice. And certainly during the last crash in Ireland, I've got practices who wouldn't have survived if it hadn't been for a thriving hygiene service. And that's beginning to show its worth in the UK as well. So I think you do need to have a conversation about how important hygiene is to the practice itself as well as to the patients. And then I would ask for meetings to discuss with the team, because you need the team on board. The more support you get from the team, the easier it's going to be with patients. But certainly start practicing improved language with your patients and just see the difference in their responses.
And very welcome, Kat. Kat Edney is here with us this evening.
Evening, Sheila. Thank you so much for an amazing presentation.
Thank you.
So
I hope I'm going to be of value and of use to your hygienists and therapists.
Definitely. Well, Smita's here saying hi from me to you both, and I've missed seeing you, Sheila.
Oh,
so that's from Smita. And please put any questions into the Q&A and or the chat, and we'll keep an eye on those. Just going back really to implementing systems, we do find that we want to implement these systems and protocols in practice. And even I've done a lot of coaching down through the years in practice. The dentists will do the buy-in, but when you get into the practice, they disappear.
Yeah.
So again, it's touching with that. And Kat, you might want to come in on this. You know, how do we get the dentist on board? And I do think this book is helpful to start that conversation as well.
Yeah. It's really tricky, isn't it? I think, you know, certainly in my career, the first portion of my career, I didn't feel that the hygiene diary was really valued for anything other than a service that was required by patients. But people didn't, the other clinicians in the practice didn't really value what that service was. It was just sort of like, I'll go and see them and come back to us later, you know, but no one really understood what we were delivering as a hygiene team. And I think you're right, it's all about education. And sometimes it's actually really quite helpful to have somebody not within the team, so a bit like yourself, Sheila, to come in and say, hold up, let's look at your processes, let's look at your systems. Why aren't you making the most of this part of your service offering? And I think sometimes for hygienists who've been maybe working in that practice for multiple years, it is really hard to be the person that has that voice. And sometimes you do need something like your book, Sheila, or someone else to just come in and say, let's look at things differently, or let's look at your profitability differently.
Yeah. What often frustrates me is when I meet a dentist who says, oh, I can do that. And I think I've met about 4 dentists in my entire career who I would say are good enough hygienists. But you know, if they think they're going to be a hygienist too, why are they doing that? You may, I don't know if you remember, but in 2024 we've got a huge satisfaction gap in most practices in terms of cosmetic treatment. A lot of the conversations about cosmetic opportunities take place in the hygiene room. So you've got a dentist who wants to do, in fact, what the dentist wants to do is a plaque removal. That's all. They don't want to do the assessment of home care. They don't want to spend time talking about when during you're going to find 5 minutes during the day to do this, Mrs. Smith. They just want to do the removal. and it's a short appointment, so there's less time for conversation. So instead, the patient comes for a 45-minute appointment in the hygiene room. We are talking in depth, in detail about plaque control, plaque removal, the skills that the patient's using, the techniques you're using, how they're going to get it into a habit, how they're going to make a difference to their lives. And, oh, by the way, you know, how do you feel about the appearance of your teeth and gums just now? Do you think there's any opportunities there? And most of the time, you're in a better position to have a discussion with the patient to pass that opportunity back to particularly associates or dentists and fill that gap that's also missing. The book is a guide for the dental health check and the hygiene visit. It's actually a manual for a therapist. It's a communication manual for a full service, full scope of practice therapist. And I should have been a bit more careful when I was writing the update to make that clear. So, to put it all together, to build this practice, we've got several opportunities that we can tackle together here and we can be of mutual benefit. So get your hands off my sterile pointy things and let me work with the patients to give them an inkling of how to look after their mouths for the rest of their lives.
And not only that, but I actually feel that hygienists and therapist rooms are really underappreciated for exactly what you mentioned, Sheila. The way that we I don't want to call it upsell, but the way that we encourage our patients to think about other treatment options, or even just, the patients come in and say, oh, the dentist told me I need a filling, but do you agree? Or the dentist says that
Yes.
I'm grinding my teeth. Do you think they're right? Do you think I should do what they say? And I would love there to be a way of us tracking how many appointments are generated by dental hygienists, therapists, and dental nurses reconfirming treatment plans to the patients.
I think there's something in that. I have to think about how to do it. One of the things I meant to mention during the presentation, I think I might have touched on it. If anyone wants to do questionnaires in their own practice, so you've got the data in your practice, so find out exactly what the difference is for you. I'm very happy to send my questionnaires and full instructions on how to analyze it.
Someone actually already said that they would really love that. I'm just going to have,
Yes.
that was Smita. She said she would love that. So I would say, Smita, if you email Siobhan or myself,
Yep.
or we can get you in contact.
Oh, and well, there's NSK Ikigai at Gmail.
Oh, that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah.
That's green now.
Okay. Send it to me. I'll never get it spelt right,
Okay.
especially Gmail.
Just going
But
back
yeah,
to, like a lot of like I can remember, the practice in London, Cat, Ultra Smile, Limehouse.
Yeah.
And I went into work there, and there was one session from 1 o'clock till 8 on one day a week. And I went into the practice to take up that session. But we implemented a hygiene-led practice, and there was a front surgery overlooking the marina. They did it all up, took the whole protocol system on, and we ended up full-time 1-hour appointments where I would use the intraoral camera. I mean, it was beautiful practice, but I would collect all the data. The dentist would come through. We'd all discuss over the patient what we were doing. Now, this was private, it wasn't National Health. But it was the most amazing job that I've ever had, really, because I got the hour, I got to do what I do, and pointing out things, taking pictures. I was able to print off pictures, of fractured amalgams and so on. I know, Kat, you use the scanner now to do things and to look at recession. But it's really, like you were saying earlier, about building that value into the appointment, isn't it?
yes.
Yeah.
And it's making sure the patient appreciates exactly the why, the what, so what, to what end, how's this going to change my life?
Yeah.
And
I'm going
you
to ask
need
you,
time to do that.
you need time. Yeah.
And
How
you
can we
need very
justify the investment in new equipment? I don't have an air polisher at the moment, but feel that that could help us to become busier as the patients do ask.
okay. So does the air polisher change anything about the time it takes and the result you get?
Well, I think the answer to that is that research will suggest that it doesn't change your time taken or your outcome. However, what it does change is potentially your patient's comfort, understanding, enjoyment, also clinician comfort, repetitive strain reduction. But I think it's also just it's becoming, as I don't know who asked the question, but whoever it was that asked the question, it's becoming quite popular mode of treatment that patients actually request. So it's quite an interesting one that you might find.
Patients either believe that it's better or they believe it's more comfortable.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
tell them that it's more comfortable, and that means that we can usually do more, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
we can do it better because it's more comfortable, because you're not shying away. And that's why we have it. So it is a comfort machine. So make sure that you always explain that that is why you're using the air polisher and that's why it's there.
If that person wants to reach out to us to nskikigai@gmail, and we can signpost you so that maybe you can trial the equipment and show the dentist how it can enhance your practice. You can reach out to us and do that.
You know what, Siobhan, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because when I first got my air polisher, which is, we're talking years ago now, Francoise, who's still a rep at NSK, lent me an air polisher for 2 weeks. And instead of thinking of it as a loan and that we weren't going to have it again, we decided to just charge for it every time I used it. And within those 2 weeks, we'd actually made enough money to buy one.
Interesting. Interesting.
We did.
I'm just going to read this interesting perspective, Sheila. I'm an old girl and practicing as a hygienist for 30 years. I work in oncology as an oncology hygienist in a hospital. It makes me sad as my patients tell me they've never had a cancer screening. A study in Canada declares only 74% have a screening. Running behind on their schedule is why they dropped doing the screen. Oops, it's 64, not 74. So that's about the cancer screening.
And the thing is, you might actually have had a cancer screening, but most people just wouldn't say that they're doing it. And so patients don't get that value.
There's a dentist in the Lake District in the UK who did who used to put a questionnaire into his practice every week. He put one question into the practice every week. And he asked one question on a pad. He's been doing it for 7, 8 years, maybe 10 years. He's been doing it for about 10 years. One question, patients come in and go, what's this week's question? Answer the question, move on. And he reports on the answers to the survey every week, gives them the feedback to it. And it's a beautiful thing to do, beautiful way to keep in touch with his patients. And he once asked his patients, he listened to me talking, and he thought, I don't believe this woman. So he asked the question to the patients, when you have a dental exam, what do you think the dentist is looking for? And the patients came back, and the results were something like 80% said teeth for holes, 60% said gums, and 40% said oral cancer, and 20% of them put I hope in brackets. And that kicked them into making changes to how they communicated with their patients about oral cancer. That was just so powerful. It'd be nice to see that repeated and see what they say now. I spoke to him last week. He bought a book, actually. I should have asked him. But that would be an interesting thing to ask.
Yeah, Ali Lowe just said, I just reviewed your book for dental health. It's fab. Thanks, Ali. What practical ways can hygienists approach dentists and practice managers?
I think if you're approaching dentists and practice managers, you have to look at the money. It's the quickest way to their hearts, because that's what they're in charge of doing. So I think you have to say, I want this department to be as successful as possible, and to a principal and a practice manager, that generally means making money. So look at the money and go with your figures and say, I want to do the best job I can for the patients, and that means we need to charge it out at this. It needs to be this contribution. How can we maximize that? I need help to do this. And you go to it from a business point of view, and you get them where it matters to them. Nurses, receptionists want to know what it's going to do for the patients. And most dentists too, I suppose, but where you're having problems getting support for the department, it tends to be because somebody's fixated on the money. So I would go in on that basis. Is that cynical of me?
That's what I do. Sheila, I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I
Yes,
hope you
miss.
don't mind.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of the time when I speak to dentists, they are complaining that their hygiene diaries are stacked full.
Yes, I've heard
And
this.
that is the opposite issue that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I know
We have a high.
I know how I manage it, but what would you suggest?
It will be. Oh heavens! I haven't been asked this question for about 7 years. I've heard that hygienists are absolutely stacked. Um, I would not reduce the time. I would not reduce the service. I would build a mezzanine floor and put another hygiene service in and get the best hygienist in the area and get her into my practice.
Yeah. So
Is
just
that,
expand the service, right?
yeah, I mean, why not?
It's
It's
a
what the
really
patients need.
it is a really difficult question, isn't it? It's so hard.
Mm,
For me personally, I feel like if your patients are coming back too often, either you're I I personally feel that if your patients are coming back too often and they need to be back, maybe the service offer being provided isn't hitting that goal of prevention
yeah,
because
that's true.
the patients are coming back still needing this help. So I actually tend to suggest extending appointment times, even in stacked diaries, and then get the education part, exactly what you've been talking about, the education on plaque control and reduction and management, a bit better so that you can
Well,
then extend time between patient appointments.
absolutely. I mean, one of the things I suggest, one of the goals that you could make for effective hygiene time is to reduce the amount of times that you have to come and see me, the hygienist or the therapist, or you can reduce your plan level because you're looking after your mouth better. And when you
Yeah,
make that a goal for patients, they work at it because they
yeah,
see it in their pockets too. It always comes back to the money.
yes,
So, and I agree with you, might not even have to extend. You just have to get them to pay attention to it. If you can do this, I suppose you're going to have to extend for a while, but you're going to have to make a difference. Um, but I think the practice that sees a proportion of patients being able to reduce the plan without reducing their health are winning. They're being really effective. So I would agree with that one, definitely.
We have often dentists still think all that can be done in typical 20-30 minutes. It has taken me years to extend new patients to 45 to 60 minutes. I suggest them to sit into half-an-hour sessions to actually appreciate how much we need to cover in a single appointment to build in value for patients. This creating repeat business. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, yeah. I would never ever reduce a hygiene appointment. The only thing you can do is reduce the value.
I don't feel like I'm very good at discussing price rises with my patients. How do you do this well?
If you have confidence that your patients love what you're doing, that you've got value, you're delivering value in what you're giving, honestly, it makes a huge difference. The practice I was talking about in the borders, where we found out that the patients loved the practice. I think they had one practice who didn't say they were brilliant at something. Um, and they told me they had an associate in the practice who wasn't coping with the need to increase prices, and he was balking at implementing the new fees. And I said, sit him down, go through these results with him, explain to him how much his patients value what he's doing, and see how he feels about his prices. And that helped. So for me, it's get the service right, get the service perfect, capture the hearts and minds of your patients, and you can then charge what you need to get your costs and profits where they should be.
Could you please go through details of that 1 hour appointment of data collection? Do you know what? I think we'll do a session on that. What do you think, Kat? I think
I
a
think
few
that
of
would
us.
be really good. To be honest, I think we really need this sort of communication, check-up, sort of protocol kind of chat for everyone. And I know I've got a couple of Ikigai educators that would be amazing at that.
But I think if we got a few different people that said what they did around their appointment, I think that might be helpful. Would that help you out there? if we did another session, because it's going to take quite a bit of time to go through that, because it's quite detailed what, you know, how we collect that data. So if that's something you'd like to do, please say yes in the chat and we'll organise that for you.
We've had a yes please already.
Okay.
Yeah,
Brilliant. And I will start tomorrow saying that I will now screen for cancer. I'm afraid I'm the
No,
one who
say you've done
says
it. Don't say you're going to. Say you've done it.
I will now check for lumps, bumps and patches that shouldn't be there. Oh, that's what she's saying. Okay, yeah, brilliant. That's
Yeah,
great.
okay.
How do you persuade NHS patients to have private hygiene?
That's a difficult one because legally you are not allowed to offer a difference between the two appointments. I think all you can say is that we set aside more time. And what we should be doing here is helping you work on the skills and the tools and the techniques you need to remove the plaque from every surface of every tooth every day. Privately, we take more time to do that because it's really important to get these habits ingrained. The difference in practice for the patient, I know that it means that you can do more, but I think for the patient it means we really take the time to help you do it at home yourself, which is the most effective thing. And you know it takes time to change someone's habits, to help them do things differently. And we can't do that. We can either tell you under the NHS, because we haven't got the time set aside to do that, we can tell you what needs to be done, but privately we can work with you to get that ingrained. It's almost like counselling.
There is a conflict of interest as the dentists are upset as they get 60% of their production at the hospital. So they want the patient to go to their private practice and charge them more. Patients are ticked as they've already been treatment planned. Any production I do is for the hospital. Quite get that one, but
that's Margaret because she is the oncology hygienist.
I see.
So that's Margaret just following up, talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kat.
Right.
Yeah.
If you would like more help, come and see me in my private practice.
You're
if you would like more help.
You're definitely in a tricky place, aren't you, Margaret, with that one?
Catherine said, yeah, go on, Kat, do it.
She says we make excuses for the price of perio treatment, yet if you need an implant, if the patient's suitable, then it's £2,500 to £3,000, and that's just for one tooth. We're not charging that much, are we, for perio treatment for all the teeth?
Yeah, and if you get enough perio treatment, you might avoid the need for it. Yes.
Yeah. In my practice, we actually start with asking our patients where they want their mouths to be, where they see their mouths in 10 years' time. What is their goal for their oral health in 10 years' time? And I'm yet to meet a patient who doesn't say happy, healthy teeth, not spending money on them, look good, feel good, you know, can smile, can eat, can chew. And then we always relate everything we say and everything we do back to that goal. And if that's their goal, then we're working hard to achieve that for them. And then they're on board every time.
Yeah. Sometimes you need some time to show them what's possible. So you have to have a conversation with them. What do you think you want now? Well, think about it for a minute. What would you really like if it were possible? Could you do that? And that takes time too. It's not an instant thing to ask a patient that question and get a meaningful answer. So there's nothing happens quickly. This is a very intimate thing that you do with your patients, and it's very meaningful to them.
So I think this has been really insightful, hasn't it? And I think really the outcome, definitely, I think we can put another webinar together on what different collection of the data looks like for appointment. I think that your dentist can watch this back and listen. And I think if we can get the next stage of, you know, what we do and how we can make it more productive, because we have all those slides, we've done that before. And then that can be a follow-up for the dental practice as well, perhaps.
Yeah. I can remember spending days with a whole day with 4 hygienists in one practice who'd never seen each other working, who'd never sat down and talked about their protocols. and we sat down and tried to get the protocols for patient care more aligned so that the team could talk about one service rather than 4. And what a difference that made to the practice. But it took us a whole day to sit down and work through the protocols. And of course, it didn't help with me because I'm not clinically trained. So I was just interfering with words here and there, putting a few different explanations on and what does that mean for the patient questions. But it's very valuable to sit down and do that.
Would you like to go back to your previous slide, Sheila, and just make sure that Margaret's saying that there's a postal strike on the UK tomorrow?
Is there? No, I hadn't heard that. Okay.
Anyway, we'll find you. We'll put it onto the My NSK website, a link through.
Okay.
What's really nice as well in this little book, there is dental health that you can go through and you can make up your own for the practices. And that's definitely something I did at the time and kept updating as I went along over the years. So that's of interest in the book as well. Many thanks to you all, ladies, for giving up your evening to help us. I really enjoyed this. Also, Sheila, I listened to you on the business podcast. You're very inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been great. This was my first webinar. This is a podcast or a webinar?
A webinar.
Wow. Congratulations.
It's my first ever webinar. Thank you.
You did amazing.
I hope I did okay.
Well done. Fantastic.
I'm coming out of retirement to a whole new ground for me too.
So we might entice you back out of retirement sometime to come back and see us again. Thank you very much, Kat. I know Kat rushes in from work on a Thursday evening, so we really appreciate it, Kat, to come on and
it was
just
so good to listen. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much,
everybody.
Sheila. Thanks,
Hope
Kat.
you find it useful.
Definitely. And I hope you all got through on the evaluation. I didn't get any comments through, but you have nskikigai@gmail.com. Please email us if you had any issues, but I think it went okay this evening, which is fantastic. So thank you very much. And we're back in a couple of weeks with Louisa Clark looking at tooth surfaces. Very interesting. Louisa is a dental hygienist and went back to do a master's and has got a lot of interesting detail for us and looking at toothpaste and mouth rinse and so on. So keep an eye out for that, and I'll post on social media. Go and have a good evening, everybody. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Bye.